No turning back now, people. Okay. Don't worry, you're not. You're good. No, you're not. You're good. If you don't see yourself there.
I was just saying I could just watch the screen instead of you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, everyone. So welcome to talk. Welcome to our Facebook Live audience. Rabbi Ouzzan, how you doing, my man? It's really nice to have you here with us. Okay, so those of you that remembered, we discussed last week the ramifications of keeping Shabbat in outer space. I noticed that Tzvi is sitting closer to me today, so if any of you have a bulletproof vest, I would greatly appreciate it. Okay, so does anybody remember, my mother, by the way, listened to me live, and I spoke to her today, and she's like, Johnny, I recognized Jessica Shrem, and she got the right answer in the class. And so I was like, yes, I'm going to tell her. She's going to be so happy. So, Jessica, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you remember the different proposals that we came up with to explain how we could be observing Shabbat in outer space? But before I ask you for the solutions, can someone else please volunteer and explain why it's an issue in the first place? Why do we have a problem with Shabbat observance in outer space?
I wasn't here last week, but my guess is because we have a mission on Earth.
Okay, that is one opinion. There is an opinion that we mentioned last week. It's the opinion of Rabbi Moshe Sternbach, who says that our mission in this world is on Earth. And therefore, if the mitzvahs can only be fulfilled in an earthly setting, then we have no business going somewhere where that observance would be compromised. The question is, though, why is that observance compromised? Boris.
Well, you have to decide whether you want to say all the blessings like 2 times every normal hour because the rotation is so fast.
Right.
Sunset and sun up.
Correct. So our entire mitzvah observance, Shabbat, the time for Shema, the time for Tefillin, is all dependent on a Earth day. Okay, 24 hours. And in space, we spoke about Ilan Ramon, the famous Israeli astronaut, who was going to go on a shuttle that was going to rotate around the Earth once every 90 minutes, which would have him saying the Shema quite often in a 24-hour period. And Shabbat, a 1.5 hour Shabbat, that would have been crazy. Jessica, what were the proposals that we brought forth? Nice and clear so that my mom can hear you.
One of the proposals was that because day and night happen so fast in orbit, that to keep all the laws, including the time-bound mitzvot, would be a very impractical way to keep it because you would have to be doing it every couple of hours. You would have to be doing the Shema, you have to be doing like your morning prayers, and for Shabbat itself, you wouldn't know where to delineate keeping a 24-hour period of the Sabbath.
Correct.
I can't remember what one more we talked about in correlation to the sun.
Good. That was number 2. Number 2 is that the laws of the spaceship go according to the land that you are hovering over, that Elon was going to hover over. The problem with that is that with every passing minute, you're moving into a different, time zone because think about it. If it's going so fast that it's circling the Earth every 90 minutes, then 1 minute it's in Paris, the next minute, depending which direction it's going, you could be, for example, let me give you an example. Do you know if the Concorde plane were still around, do you know how long it took the Concorde plane to fly from Paris to New York? 3 hours. That's it. Now imagine, by today, this was in the 1990s maybe? 1980s, 1990s, okay? By today, if the Concorde hadn't been discontinued, part of the reason why it was discontinued was because of the high cost. Okay, not everybody could afford to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for these flights. And number 2, there was a tremendous security, safety issue, is that the plane had to take off on a much higher, steeper angle, and there was that famous disaster. If any of you are old enough to remember that, does anybody remember the disaster of the Concorde plane? That upon takeoff, there was a piece of shrapnel on the runway, and it got caught in the plane, and the plane took off, and it caught fire upon takeoff. It hovered over Paris. I think it was Paris, and then it crashed. So they discontinued the plane. But imagine if Yeah.
Are there any survivors?
There were no survivors. It was a very tragic
But it's a very
incident.
Small number of people on the Concorde.
There were a lot. There were that plane. There were like over 100, 150 people.
Concords don't have a lot of space.
This one did.
And only rich people.
What? Yeah. So it was only run by Air France, and British Airways, and sure enough, they continued it. Imagine for a second, if that technology had continued, what kind of a fast, right, Ori, this probably interests you, you being a pilot, right? What are your thoughts? Like, imagine if with today's technology, it's very possible that these planes could make it maybe in less than 3 hours, maybe 2 hours, who knows? Why is that important in Judaism? Imagine that you decide right after Shabbat in Paris, okay, to leave to New York. So it's Motzei Shabbat, it's Saturday night, Shabbat is already over, you can take a plane, no sweat. The problem is you're traveling so fast, let's say you want to go to New York, or let's say you want to go to, LA, whatever it is. Let's say if you're leaving, let's say, London to go to New York. Now, how far is New York from London?
3,000.
Well, how far is it in hours? How far back in time is it? 6 hours?
6 hours.
So think about it.
It's not.
It's
5
more.
hours.
It's 5 hours? So think about it. If a Concorde plane is flying right after Shabbat is over towards New York and arriving there in 2.5 hours, you're flying into Shabbat. Huh?
You're not allowed to leave the plane until Shabbos is over.
Okay. But you're flying
But
into
it's the
Shabbat.
same like
If
today.
someone-
You go to a,
What?
Just tell the stewardess
it's
to
like
stay an
today. You
extra
take a
hour,
flight
know?
from Houston in Friday morning, and you will land in Shabbat.
Didn't you already fulfill
the
your
same.
obligation before?
No, but we are bound by the time in which we find ourselves. Boris.
But didn't you say last week that if the bus is already going, if the train is already going, then you're not violating? Really, I mean, it's like the lowest level of violation because
Agreed.
you're not starting or stopping.
Agreed. That's a violation in terms of an action, but you still find yourself in Shabbat. That itself is not you're right. You haven't violated anything, but it's just an interesting phenomenon. Another guy I mentioned this to earlier today. He brought something else to my attention. Imagine you finish fasting, or you're in the middle of a fast. You're in the middle of a fast day, and you said, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to fly to New York." Right? You're in the middle of a fast day. You get to New York, and they're 5 hours back in the fast day. You've just added to your fast day. This happened to my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's happened to
I
you?
had to have a 28-hour fast.
28-hour fast. You hear that? 28-hour fast?
I was
Which
like, I
fast
didn't.
it was?
It was
Because, and
Tisha
what?
B'Av.
Right, Tisha B'Av. That
I was
happened.
like, I didn't really plan that.
Right.
Well.
That happened to my brother. I don't remember if it was Tisha B'Av or Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, but my brother was leaving Israel, and he left maybe before a fast or in the middle of a fast, and by the time he got to Toronto, it was still part of that fast. So he had a very, very long fast, and the reason for that is because you're right. Try to ditch, escape the fast. Let's fly away from the fast.
I mean, you can't technically do that.
Right? We are bound by the time in which we find ourselves. Okay? Now, so in space, what time is that? What's the time in space? So the final proposal that we came up with last week was the proposal that you choose a 24-hour period to follow, and you avoid considering the sunrises and sunsets. You don't care what the world looks like outside your space shuttle. You don't care about the sunrise. You don't care about the sunset. You choose a 24-hour period, and that is the one you're following with respect to mitzvah observance. Now, that doesn't mean that you've fulfilled that mitzvah with the same potency that you would have on planet Earth. Some opinions say that you've only fulfilled the mitzvah rabbinically, which is one level down than a deoraita, than a biblical level. Other opinions say you haven't fulfilled a mitzvah at all, but you should still do it. Why should you still do it? To maintain your familiarity with the mitzvah. Imagine someone, some astronauts spend a lot more than a couple days or weeks or months in space. There are astronauts that spend a year in space, right, in the space station, right? Part of it is a study of how the human body handles life in space. So imagine, you're spending all your time there. That's pretty crazy to think. If we're Jews and we believe that our ability to connect with God and our ability to lead productive lives is by fulfilling mitzvot, then it's a big deal for those mitzvot not to count during the duration of our time in space. But we still do them to maintain familiarity. Okay? So now, that was last week's class. We also discussed a Gemara. Yes, Jennifer.
How many Jews made it to space?
How many Jews? As far as I know, the only Jew, unless there's other hidden ones that we didn't know about, was Ilan Ramon, the Israeli astronaut who flew out with the Columbia and unfortunately died upon re-entry to Earth. You heard about that catastrophe? That you didn't hear about that space shuttle? Okay, you were probably younger. But yeah, this was the one and only Israeli astronaut ever to join a NASA mission. And he basically asked the question of how do I keep Shabbat in space?
How long was he out there?
He was out there, I'm not sure. Do you know, Yair, how long he was in
but
space?
They finished, I think, more than 1 month.
He had a
oh,
Sefer Torah.
Maybe
He had a
21
Sefer Torah,
days,
right?
28 days, something
It
like
wasn't a
that.
very long mission.
It was or 21 or 28, I don't really remember.
Okay. Now, the question we are going to ask here is, how do we keep Shabbat in the Arctic Circle? What's the issue with keeping Shabbat in the Arctic Circle?
It's sunlight for 6 months.
Okay? There are times in the year where, relative to the sun, it has months and months where the sun doesn't go down. And there are times in the winter where it can go months and months without the sun coming up. So here you're left with a similar problem, except that you're not in space, you're in planet Earth. So technically, here, there is a sunrise, there is a sunset. It's just months and months apart, perhaps 180 days, if I remember correctly, right? 127 day Shabbat. So the question is, they wanted to know, how do we spend Shabbat? There was a couple that was doing a Shabbat in a city called, and this is a real city, it's called Longyearbyen, Norway. It's the largest town that's close to the North Pole, and the sun does not set in that city between April 18th and August 23rd. And they were going to be there on the Shabbat of July 4th and 5th to celebrate, I guess, American independence. Who knows, right? So they wanted to know, how do we keep Shabbat? How do we keep Shabbat? So, what do you guys say?
You can follow the nearest town that does have sunsets.
Why do you say that? The nearest town could be hundreds and hundreds of miles south, right? I think they had this problem in maybe Danzig or they have cities in Northern Europe, south of Scandinavia, where it's not that the sun doesn't set. I spoke to a friend of mine. I have a roommate who's from Belgium, and he has a great-grandfather who actually gives a halakhic responsum in this booklet. So when I saw his great-grandfather's name, I immediately called him. He's in Belgium, and he told me that in Antwerp, which is a northern city in Europe, in the summer, Shabbat can end at 11 p.m. for this same reason.
Happen
What?
every time in Manchester. and
Wow,
London.
that's a long
Only
Shabbat.
2 days a week. 2 weeks a year.
2 weeks a year it ends
Yeah,
Shabbat.
but in the winter it goes out at like.
And it
3:30
happened
the
also in
afternoon.
In the winter, 3:30 in the
Shabbat.
afternoon, Shabbat is over.
Yeah, but I mean, it would start the same.
It happened also in Tisha
Yeah, like on
B'Av.
Friday,
Tisha B'Av
it's still
was
25
very
hours.
That's
late.
long.
I was in Amsterdam in the last time.
Sometimes we eat lunch at
Yeah,
3.
but there's no time for 3 meals.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, it's not any longer.
That's true. We had this conversation with my wife if we prefer the long Shabbatot of the summer or the short Shabbatot of the winter. And what we really liked about the short Shabbatot of the winter is that we love it for every reason. You end your day early on Friday and you have a whole nice long stretch of time where even after you finish the meal, you have a couple good hours between, let's say, 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. where you can read, you can chill, you can meet with friends, you can have an amazing time, you know? And Motzei Shabbat, Saturday night, you have plenty of time after Shabbat to also learn Torah, right? Or do whatever it is that people do Motzei Shabbat, Saturday night. Okay, so this was the question. What do we do?
Does Alaska also have the same issue?
Alaska? Good question. Probably.
I think it does. I know there's like a Chabad of Alaska or something.
Chabad?
They probably.
I'm sure Chabad has it figured out.
Yeah.
But there's also Hawaii. Hawaii has a different issue, though. Hawaii is on the line, is on the line that divides the.
International Day.
Thank you. It's on the international date line. So there is a suffix. Or my master told me there is a suffix. Suffix means a doubt. There's a doubt which day. Hey, George. Can everybody tell George you should be here? George, we want you here, George.
No, he's sick.
He's sick? Oh, okay, apparently you're sick. Feel better, George. We love you.
George, don't get us sick.
What?
Stay home.
I don't want to get it.
Huh?
I don't want to be sick again.
Yeah.
But you had the same thing.
He was posting he wasn't feeling well.
Did you come to class and give it to George? I'm just kidding.
I stayed home for like a week.
We love you, George. So anyways, there's a status of suffix. There's a status of doubt with Hawaii. And therefore, Rabbi Masri told me that the custom in Hawaii is to actually keep 2 days of Shabbat, one biblically and one rabbinically. So it's pretty funky.
I've heard that if you're visiting, you can keep what you observe at home.
That would make sense because that's what people do in Israel. When people go to Israel, if they're not living in Israel, then they keep what they keep in Chutz La'aretz, in the diaspora. So in Chutz La'aretz, how many days of Yom Tov do we keep, Ori? We keep 2 days. Minhag HaMakom, but it's that's why on the second day, right, you do it quietly. You don't make a big show about it. The same thing is with Israel. If an Israeli comes to Chutz La'aretz, he only halachically has to keep 1 day, because in Israel they only keep one day of Yom Tov. So I had this problem. Before I moved to Houston, I was living in Israel, and I would come to Toronto to spend Passover with my in-laws. And you know how it works with Passover? It's 8 days in America, in Chutz La'aretz, and it's 7 days in Israel, which means that the last day, which is Yom Tov in Toronto, where I was visiting, is really a tefillin day. It's a regular weekday in Toronto. So what do? So my rabbi told me to get up early, wear my tefillin, hiddenly, meaning out of ear sight of anyone, and then go to synagogue, pray with them using my own siddur, meaning my own tefillah, because we know that the silent prayer, the Amidah, is different during the week than it is on Yom Tov, and do the best you can without drawing attention to the fact that you are really behaving differently than them. Needless to say, you don't go around turning any lights on, you don't use the car. You basically, for all intents and purposes, practice that day without doing the mitzvot and saying the prayers that apply to that day, because it's a weekday. You technically can biblically, but you shouldn't. According to halacha, you really shouldn't. You should try to keep. Why?
I was hearing all of the Sukkot, and in the second day, that I supposed to keep Shabbat, I drive and do everything regular because I'm from Israel.
Shame on you.
Why?
I'm just you're just rubbing it in. No, because there is an element of minhag hamakom that Ori said, that a person is supposed to take upon themselves to a degree the traditions that apply to that place. Remember, this is a recurring theme, my friends. Okay, we are bound to the place and the time in which we find ourselves with respect to Torah observance. Yes.
If you was in Canada.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry?
You are in Canada, but you are alone. You don't have another Jewish community next to you, only your family from Israel.
Yes.
And you are traveling. You're traveling with your family.
Where are you? You're in Canada.
In Canada.
Do you live in Canada?
No, you live in Israel and you can.
So if there's
only
no one
for
there,
travel.
100%.
You don't know any other
if
Jewish
there's no
there.
one else there and you're by yourself, 100% you
what
keep
you
1
want.
day. You keep 1 day.
Would that not be Marisol?
No, because there's no one to see you.
You don't know that.
So you
But he's
say
saying
that
that nobody
basically
sees
it's
you.
only
Like that.
maritime.
Huh?
If you dress like that,
No, but you're in the middle of the woods. You're in the.
You said it's only
You
because
don't physically
maritime you
see
need to
other
do it.
human
right,
beings.
right. Meaning, if you're in a Jewish community area, then that's where you don't.
Only biglan maritime.
Okay, so we're going to discuss a couple different approaches of how to address Shabbat in the Arctic. Approach number 1, okay? As long as the sun does not actually set, meaning go below the horizon, it remains day. You follow that? What that means is you're going to have one long Shabbat.
Live the Shabbat. You need to pray only one time Shacharit, and that's it.
And that's it. It's amazing, right?
6 months.
Right?
I can do it.
Right, we mentioned that last week, right? The huge crockpot. So he's the one that says that it's tough luck. You have no choice around the matter. Judaism decides that a day, we're gonna see differing opinions about this, but Judaism seems to define a day as sunrise to sunset, right? Or sunset, meaning in Judaism the day begins with night, right? The 24-hour period begins with night, and then you have the day period. So according to that, tough luck. You're in the Arctic. You have you have a long period between sunrise and sunset. That's your.
so the day is not defined by revolutions of the earth.
It is.
Not if it's by the sunset.
Well, that's what it means. That's what it means. The sunrise
If
and the
that's what it means,
sunset. Yeah.
then 24 hours should be enough.
No. So
25.
no. So according to this opinion, it's sunrise and sunset.
So does that mean for those
it's really-
6?
According to this approach. So according to this approach, for those 180 days, what? What's so funny?
Sorry.
What?
Nothing. We were all three talking at the same time.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, it's really by the sun because there's like halachic times like midday,
Right.
which is halfway between sunrise and sunset.
So does that mean for those 4 to 6 months, you do shacharis like
Only one
at
time.
some point in April, mincha at some point in like August or
It's
whatever,
great to.
and then Mariv in September?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have
Got it.
then we
And you
have
have Shabbat
um,
only one time in 7 years.
But it lasts for 5-6 months.
And you have Yovel only one in a lot of years.
right. Then there's approach B. Approach B is that there is no day or night, halachically speaking, near the poles, near the North Pole and South Pole. This is similar to viewing the North and South Pole like space, right? Space doesn't have an earthly pattern of sunrise and sunset. The North and South Pole don't have an earthly pattern of sunrise and sunset. According to this opinion, it's irrelevant. Whatever you do. It's not really significant. And this is why this opinion is says that from the fact that we see that it's difficult to observe Judaism in such a place, that would stand to reason that maybe, according to this opinion, maybe a Jew should not go to such a place. Because if, after all, like we keep mentioning and like we've said in so many classes, why are we here in this world? We're not here just to float. We're not here just to get up, work, eat, sleep. We're here on a mission. We're here to delve into our spirituality, use our free will in this world to make decisions that bring us closer and closer to God. One of the fundamental ways of doing that is by doing the mitzvot. If you can't do the mitzvot somewhere, space, North Pole, South Pole, then this opinion is giving the is saying that you shouldn't be there. You shouldn't go there in the first place. Okay?
Well, you have no choice.
Huh? What if you have no choice? Then you have no choice. If you have no choice, there's nothing you can do. You're just not getting any mitzvah out of it. We finally come to the last approach, which is going to be subject to some differentiating, I don't know if that's a word, opinions. Okay? Chaim! Guys, everybody, Mazel Tov! Siman Tov! Mazel Tov! Mazel Tov! Siman Tov! Siman Tov! Mazel Tov! Mazel Tov! Siman Tov! Yehelanu. It's, can you believe this? This is real passion for Jewish learning. He just got married and he's back to talk. Can you believe this guy? Unbelievable. Or is it the food? Just joking. Okay, so what's this last approach? Does anybody want to take a guess? What's the last approach of how we would keep Shabbat in the North or South Pole?
Pick a 24-hour time.
Okay, the question's going to be, she's right, pick a 24-hour time. The question is, how do we choose that 24-hour time? According to who? According to which frame of reference do you go to
The
decide?
nearest city.
Huh?
The nearest city.
The nearest city that
That has
has
sunset.
that has sunrise and
Like on
sunset.
regular
Okay,
night.
why? Just because of
You don't
proximity?
wanna go- yeah, like because you're on the same south, not like east or west, south. Because you're in the same time zone as them.
Okay,
So the sun, like the day, is in the same.
okay. So
I
Tzvi
would
wants
take
this.
Jerusalem.
Huh?
Jerusalem.
I would
Boris, you want me to
think-
get you a
No,
chair?
Jerusalem
I
has.
would think also proximity
in
because
your
wherever
town.
you are living that doesn't have the sun fully setting,
Yeah.
I'm sure they still have a standard 24-hour day. There's like something that's the middle of the night where no businesses are open, nothing's happening.
Right.
And then there's like a morning time where people start going to work and you want to be somewhere along those lines for your day.
Okay. Okay. Jessica?
How about according to the time that he or she arrives?
According to the time that she arrives, okay, that's going to be one of the possibilities. She got the answer. Okay. That's going to be one of them. This is all going on the assumption that 24 hours is directly related to sunrise and sunset. The question is, we're about to challenge that. If everybody could please turn to source 13.
That's the same answer as me.
But yours is for
No, it's
No, but yours
technically the same.
yours was following a city of proximity. What if a city of proximity has a different time zone
No,
than
I'm
where
saying
you
south,
find yourself?
as in the same time zone.
Oh, in the same time zone.
Yeah,
So
that's
that
what
would
I meant.
work the same. That
That would be the
would
same thing.
that
It's
would
the
not
time-
necessarily work the same. She's saying start the 24-hour clock when you get there.
What if you arrive at like midday? Like Shabbat's going to start at midday.
Wait, what?
Oh well, I suppose.
It doesn't matter though, because you
I don't know
wouldn't,
what
you wouldn't know anyway. Whether
Because
it's-
Because night and day, you can't see the sunset
So you
or
start
sunrise.
what when you arrive? The clock starts when you arrive, or you just go by the time
When
that you arrive.
I would say you arrive and it starts Sunday night, the first night, first day of the week. You just start first day of the week.
Oh, okay, that's not mine.
Okay, can everybody turn to your booklets? Tzvi, can I bother you to shut that light that's making the noise in the bathroom? Thank you. Can everybody go to your booklets to source 13? Okay? This is source 17. Keep going.
Not paid, sir.
Let's see, where are
This
we?
is 11.
Switch. There we go. Okay, you ready? Rabbi Yehuda quoted Rav as saying as follows. 10 things were created on the first day. First day of planet Earth, okay? Boris, are you listening? Good. All right? They are heaven and earth, desolation and emptiness, light and darkness, spirit and water, and now pay attention to the following, the measure of day and the measure of night. That was created on the first day, okay? As it is written, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, desolation and emptiness, as it is written, etc., etc., and the earth was full of desolation and emptiness. Okay, the important thing, we don't need to read the rest of it. All the Gemara does, all the Talmud does, is bring proofs to support its statement that all of those things were created on the first day. Now take a look at source 14. Source 14 is going to be Rashi, the famous commentary from France, who comments on this Gemara and explains what is the measure of day and measure of night? The two of them together form a 24-hour period. Okay? So we see that the concept of a 24-hour period, according to this Talmud, and according to Rashi's explanation of that Talmud, exists irrespective of a sunrise and sunset. Did you follow that, Tzvi? Did you follow that, Danielle? That here it's saying, what's the measure of day and the measure of night? Now pay attention. When was the measure of day and measure of night created, according to this Talmud? On day 1. Do any of you know when the sun and the moon were created? Day 4. Day 4. That means that the idea of a 24-hour day and night, this would support Tzvi and Jessica, the idea of a 24-hour day and night, okay, existed before there even existed a concept of sunrise and sunset. If that's the case, maybe we can fall back on this idea and say that, okay, whether you're in space, whether you're in the Arctic, you can initiate your own 24-hour clock of, day and night. Tzvi's bothered. All right, Tzvi, give it to me.
I like it. You just have to when you start that clock, and that's
The question is, when do you start that clock? We haven't answered that yet.
Right.
Correct.
I just think you go by the last time. Like you continue the clock wherever it was before. You don't start a new clock. You just
Don't you
continue
do it
wherever.
according to like Shabbat?
But
Huh?
3 stars are out. that means
if
that,
you
like,
talk
next
about
time.
the religion, every day in the sun,
Problem is,
sunrise,
we want to know
you
how to
start the
live
clock
life.
from
Like,
the
if you're in
beginning.
the Arctic, 3 stars,
know?
you have to wait 180 days for
Every
that.
day.
So what do? You're
The
stuck
time
in
of day,
Shabbat
I
for
mean,
180
the
days?
day of week. Like, let's say you arrive and it's around about Sunday, but you don't know for sure because of which time zone. It gets complicated when you're actually arriving.
More dessert.
Doesn't the Arctic have?
Yeah.
More dessert.
Probably.
Doesn't the Arctic have its own clock?
I'd say
I don't know. Does anybody live in the Arctic?
Yes, scientists.
Right.
I've got like 3 of them.
I mean, these people. What? Yeah.
So I'm sure they have like a clock that they go.
But a clock has no halachic significance, Ori. You could just show up and say, oh, you know what?
According to science, they have. It has according to science proven when.
What would happen if you took an atomic clock to the exact North Pole? What would happen if you took... That's a fascinating question.
I don't know how.
What would happen if you took an atomic clock to the exact... Oh, somebody's taking out his Google Ask.
Actually,
Does anyone know how an atomic clock works?
Okay, I don't know how an atomic clock
Based
works. I'm
on-
assuming it's one of those clocks that works automatically based on where you are in the world. Okay, that's what I meant.
No,
So let's say you take one of those, like an iPhone. Guys, iPhone has a system where it can detect where you are and it knows what time zone you're in and it gives you the time automatically. It wasn't always like that, but now iPhone's awesome. So what happens if you take your iPhone to the exact North Pole? What's it going to show? Oh, you're in Russian time. Oh, you're in Canada time. You know, you're like, you know what I'm saying? Russia and Canada are like this on the globe. So how do you do it?
It's gonna
Huh?
say,
Anybody for a quest?
it's probably gonna say no service.
No service? That's true. But even without service, it still gives you the time.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't?
It's like
It'll give you
airplane
time.
mode, based on where you
Oh,
were
it doesn't
before.
update it. It needs internet. It needs data. Maybe you hook a satellite piece to the iPhone. Boris, where are you going? Okay. So how do we determine day and night in the Arctic Circle? All we have is this 24-hour period. How do we determine, right? So Jessica, if we're going with you and Tzvi's approach that we have to decide on a 24-hour period of time, that's great, and that is going to be the answer. How do you decide when is which? When is the 12-hour day? When is the 12-hour night? So take a look at source 15. Jessica, you want to read it for us?
Say when the sun's highest in the sky and lowest in the sky, because it doesn't just go around in a circle like that. It goes
Wow.
like that.
You, my friend, are saying like you looked ahead, didn't you?
I did not.
Okay, Jessica, go ahead. Read source 15.
According to this, in a place and time outside of the domination of the luminaries, before the fourth day of creation, as mentioned in our discussion of the area near the Earth's poles, the primordial division of the measure of day and the measure of night still stands. Day and night are determined by their original definition, 2 equal parts of a 24-hour long earthly orbit as exist in other places on the days of the vernal and autumnal equinoxes, the first day of spring and fall, when the day and night are of equal length.
Okay, that to me was scientific talk. I don't really. Did any of you follow? Follow Danielle? Can you explain to us what?
The day and the night are only the same time twice a year.
Okay.
So it's saying that, like, it follows that. Because during certain times of the year, the night is longer, and certain times the day is longer.
Gotcha.
So we get, like, the summer and winter.
Now, those days where the quantity of time is equal, is that the same everywhere in the world on that day? Or does every place have its own equinox? It's the same day. So, one second.
Yes.
That means that everywhere in the world there's an equal amount of day and nighttime. Okay, so what's he saying here? He's suggesting that if you are outside the influences of sunrise and sunset, you can just presume a 12-hour day and a 12-hour night. He doesn't let us know when to start that, though. So here there's a fascinating piece.
The equinox. So,
What does he say?
First day of spring, first day of autumn.
Right. Okay.
I mean, if you don't have a calendar, then.
So, Tzvi, read source 16. He says what you were saying, something fascinating.
I don't know this font.
I know, it's weird. It looks like Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
Dun, 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 dun.
We must examine how people live in or travel to countries near the Earth's poles should keep Shabbat. Because of their proximity to the pole, the day is so long in the summer that one day ends up being 2 months or more. And there is even a place where one day lasts half a year and it is night the other half. At the pole itself there is no day and night at all. Rather, all year long it is being
Bein hashmashat. Bein
twilight.
hashmashat.
Because there is no sunrise and sunset there. For the equator is their horizon. If so, how should they keep Shabbat there? It seems to me that they should count their 7 equal periods of 24 hours. They should calculate Shabbat based on when they arrive there.
Oh, so there you go. So Tzvi was mechaven. Tzvi got the, or was it Jessica or Tzvi? You said from, it was Jessica. Oh, Jessica got the answer again. According to Rav Yaakov Emden, the way you determine the 24 hours is as soon as you get there. You get there, you start the clock. And that is your time from then on. Okay? Now, what does that mean? So as an example, let's say someone arrives in the Arctic on Tuesday at 4 p.m. They know it's Tuesday. They know it's 4 p.m. That means that the 24-hour clock starts. When are they starting Shabbat, therefore? on Friday at 4 p.m. because they're having exactly equal hours. Exactly equal hours.
What if there's already a shul there in the Chabad or whatever, and they already started?
In the North Pole, someday I could see that happening.
Well, that would be
There's Chabad of Alaska.
Chabad of Alaska, yeah.
I think
Yeah, that's what I
Tuesday is a spot for prayer.
thought I heard a rabbi.
Eskimo Chabad.
Okay, take a look at source. Take a look at source 17. This is going to be the Tiferet Yisrael. Take a look at source 17. The fact that there are differences between different locations, that night comes earlier in one place than another, does not bother me, for it certainly makes sense that every man should go according to his place and time. Therefore, all of Israel is not keeping Shabbat at one time and in one place. In fact, God sanctified us with his mitzvot and commanded each of us to keep his Shabbat according to his place and time. But I am in doubt about someone who happened to come close to the North Pole in the summer, for there are a number of straight months where there is genuine daylight, and you see the sun surround the entire horizon, east, south, west, and north. What should a Jew who goes there with sailors on a whale hunting expedition do? When should he pray the morning and evening prayers, and when should he keep the Shabbat? Tzvi, you should pay attention because I think he's about to say what your suggestion was, okay? Source 18. This is fascinating. Look at what the Tiferet Yisrael says. He says, we can say that there is a different indicator there. And pay attention, one observing the sun in the Arctic sky will note that the sun makes the rounds of all four directions in a 24-hour period. Even though the sun does not set below the horizon there, one can still tell that the Earth has made its entire daily rotation on its axis by watching a complete rotation of the sun in the sky. If so, he knows that each revolution that the sun makes is one day. You hear that? That's fascinating. That means that unlike a regular city where you're able to tell what a day is by simply looking at sunrise and sunset, in the Arctic, even though the sun doesn't rise nor set for many, many months, it moves around in the sky. If you can learn the movement of the sun in the sky and divide it into 4 parts, then you can calculate exactly what a 24-hour period looks like in an Arctic space where there's no sunrise and sunset.
It's not, if you're at the North Pole, the sun doesn't just stay in the middle, it goes around. But
that's exactly what he's saying.
It doesn't go around the middle, it goes kind of like...
Correct.
Elongated. So you can tell when it's night anyway, you don't have to learn it, because it'll be closer to the horizon.
Yeah. Therefore, if according...
And today you have clock.
Yeah.
So look at this. Therefore, if according to his time, he comes there on a Sunday, he will know that the 7th revolution that the sun makes will be Shabbat. Because he has seen the sun make this journey around the sky 7 times. Right? So although he will not know his time to pray the morning or afternoon prayers, because when he gets there, he doesn't really know what time it really is. Just because he sees the sun at one point of the sky, that doesn't mean it's more morning than evening. He has no idea. Right? So at the same time, right? Likewise, through this, he will not know when Shabbat should come in or go out, or whether he should keep Shabbat according to the European or American clock, right? Think about it. Let's say you have 2 friends that are meeting up in the Arctic, one from Canada, one from Russia. How do they know which time they're both arriving in?
assuming they're not the only 2 humans there, they would just ask the other person who's nearby.
Right.
But
Right.
Just not like stand on the North Pole.
So
slightly in one direction.
it stands to reason that 2 different people, if they were to choose the time of their origin, they could potentially be keeping 2 different Shabbat times in the same location. That's crazy, according to this.
But it's not supposed to be like...
Excuse me, Mr. Russian Boris, Shabbat is already over for you. You know what I'm saying? And then Mr. Canada shows up and says, oh, I still have 7 hours left. Sorry, it's still Shabbat for me. Even knowing you're in there in the same time. What'd you say, Chaim?
So it's 7-hour difference, not like...
7 hour. What do you mean 7 hour?
Between the, if you're on the Canada side...
Oh, that I don't know exactly what the time difference is, but... Well, I don't know. What is the time difference between Canada and Russia?
How can it be 7 hours? It should be
No. A person from Canada that's flying to the Arctic and a person from Russia that's flying to the Arctic. They get there at the same time. Okay? How do they...
Physically, it's the same...
But that's what's crazy about this, is that even though they're in the same space, according to this...
But that's the thing you just said, if you're in Canada but you're from Israel, you observe on your own
Yeah, but you're still following the Shema based on the times there. You're following the fast day based on its time. You're following Tefillin based on its time. That is a question of observance. You are an Israeli, and therefore, as a person who lives in Israel, just because you're visiting in America, that doesn't mean you lose the customs that you have in the place where you live. That's one concept. There's another concept that regardless of where you're from, regardless of what country you live in, if there's a mitzvah that's applicable now where you stand, you have to follow that, right?
Can I show you something?
Yes. Anchorage, Alaska. Light candles, Friday, July 7th.
Yeah, I was looking at the progression of time
Okay,
changes.
okay, so they light candles at 11:12 p.m. That's late. And Sunday, Shabbat ends on Sunday at 2 a.m. Oh my gosh. Anchorage, Alaska. Shabbaton, people. The ultimate one. We will make you suffer.
I guess they can't really bring in Shabbat early.
Huh?
That early.
But
There's
that's
like
not even
a
25 hours. That's like 28
PM
hours.
daytime?
there's a max number of
Or 2 p.m.
minutes before actual candle lighting that you can bring in Shabbat early.
2 a.m. Sunday is Motzei Shabbat.
They can't
Saturday.
start Shabbat
It doesn't
until
make any sense. I
10
can travel Sunday, Shabbat end on Sunday.
Yeah.
That's a long
It's crazy.
Shabbat.
Cruise to Alaska.
It's
Danielle?
like bedtime
Cruise
by
to
the
the
time
north.
Shabbat starts.
Yeah. This is crazy, guys. Okay. So he should note the hour that he reached there, right, Jessica? According to his clock. For instance, if he came at 6 p.m. according to his time, right, that will remain 6 p.m. on Sunday, and he will count another 5 times, 24 hours or 5 revolutions of the sun until that point, and then begin to keep Shabbat for the next 24 hours. Okay? And he continues. In any case, it seems to me that if he were to then transgress the Shabbat by doing forbidden activities, it would be no better than someone who was walking in the desert. Okay, we mentioned that Gemara. According to this approach, if there are 2 people right there, one from America and one from Europe, each one will observe his Shabbat according to the place he left. But they are only obligated on a rabbinic level, he says. Okay? Now, Rabbi Moshe Sternbach wants to know, he gives another approach. How do you count days when the sun does not set for months? Okay? How do you count days? So here he says something interesting. He says, and look at where he says answer. Okay, we're in source 19. Danielle, you want to read? Look at where he says, where the second paragraph on source 19 where it starts with answer. He's trying to explain how we calculate days when the sun does not set.
Okay. The later authorities dealt with this issue, and my position is that there is no daytime in the winter period when the sun does not appear at all, or nighttime in the summer months when the sun does not set there, but nevertheless we count a day as having passed. The change from, for instance, Friday to Shabbat takes place in the summer months at the moment that the location is the closest to the sun, when the sun is at its lowest point in the sky. Similarly, when there is a long night, the day switches when the point as far as possible from the sun is reached. According to this, there are places where daytime is but a fleeting moment, and similarly, sometimes nighttime is but a fleeting moment. Since this person is traveling to a place where there is no day, daytime is but a fleeting moment, and the mitzvot of the day are not applicable, even though Shabbat is not canceled.
That's wild. In my opinion, a person should not live in such places because he absolves himself from the mitzvot of the day. Only if he is forced to be there, the law is, as I have stated, that the days continue to progress, but there is no daytime when the sun does not appear for months, and there is no nighttime when the sun... So this rabbi, Moshe Sternbach, is more of on the extreme side of the spectrum of saying, you really shouldn't go there, but if you do go there, here's the way to follow. I didn't fully understand how he determines the days based on the closeness of the sun to the horizon. So unless any of you want to give us an explanation of how you understood that, I couldn't understand that. Did you? Let's see. No, seriously. Do you understand?
I don't remember.
You know, Jessica?
Well, it said to the lowest point on the horizon, so like if you see that the sun is at its lowest point,
That
that's
signifies.
where you count it, and then when the moon and the darkness is at that lowest peak point, whereas if the sun, you can be looking at it up here, and then when it's going down, it's going down. This is in our normal calendar here.
Gotcha.
But over there, then if you see it at its lowest point beyond your the limit of your eyes, that's where you count that the day is turned to night.
Uh-huh.
That's what I understood. But
Okay.
I might
Based
be
on what
wrong.
I was saying about how you count a day.
Okay. I have here in my notes another opinion, the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai lived in Iraq, and he established that in such a situation, 6 p.m. is the standard time, right? 6 p.m. 6 a.m. 6 a.m. is considered sunrise, and 6 p.m. is considered sunset. Okay. So candle lighting for Shabbat is calculated based on a 6 p.m. sunset on Friday afternoon. The end of Shabbat would be Saturday at 6 p.m.
Not supposed to be 7.
Meaning he establishes that as a set rule. Because again, you have no way of determining the day or the time. So he establishes that as a general rule. Now listen to this. Rabbi Yosef Lieberman gives another opinion that he should keep according to the clock of
Israel.
Yes. He says that if you have no idea, if you're in a place, and this probably refers to space for someone living in space as well, like Ilan Ramon, if you are in space or you're in the Arctic, a place where you cannot determine time through the regular means, then Rabbi Lieberman wants to say that you go with the clock of Israel. Okay? And the reason why he brings that is because Israel is the ideal place for keeping the Torah's mitzvot. Remember, we mentioned last week that there's an opinion that says that the mitzvot that we do outside of Israel don't really count as potently, if that's a word, as they do in Israel. Rather, they are considered to be practice for the day that Bezrat Hashem, God willing, Mashiach will come. We'll all go to Israel and we'll be able to fulfill the mitzvot in their ideal way. Some of us are fortunate to be going back to Israel soon. Ditcher. Okay, you're the lucky one. Here.
I think you should be canceled from the New York trip.
Yeah, I don't know if you should go on the New York trip. It's really for, people that Okay, so according to so now I have something. Who's the one that said that you go with the place that you came from? Was that you, Tzvi? So Rabbi Halperin says Rabbi Halperin told Ilan Ramon to keep mind of the time of the place from which you left. So he would basically choose Cape Canaveral, which is where he left from, and follow, while in space, the time of Cape Canaveral and follow Jewish tradition according to that time. But incorporating Rabbi Lieberman's, he says that he could then switch to Israel time when he first flew directly over Israel. That's pretty fascinating. So basically, he launches from Cape Canaveral. He keeps Cape Canaveral's time while in space until he passes over Israel, where there's precedent and there's halachic authorities. Remember the opinion that we said last week that says you can go according to the land that you're on top of? You just never leave that time zone. So you go over Israel, and then that's your time.
What if when you land in, let's say, the Gulf of Mexico?
Then you're immediately in Gulf of Mexico. But while you're in the zone of vague time definition, you follow either your place of origin or you follow Israel, according to Rabbi Lieberman. Yes, Ori?
Why would you not follow the time of the space?
What time of space?
Satellite has a time when they tell you.
It's a fake
Houston
time.
time.
It's not real time.
So what?
The Torah defines time for us. We have a Torah.
Wait, you're making up the time also.
Time doesn't
No,
exist.
but you're following a frame of reference. You're creating a frame of reference.
What's
That's already a
time?
reference That's been for years.
It's scientific. It's not Torah based. You see, the Torah told us that time follows
849
measures.
is scientific.
Sorry?
849 is scientific. It's nothing to do with the Torah. And we hold by this. 849.
That's
We
actually
hold
not
by-
true.
so we have
We
a
hold by
reference.
Sha'ot
What's
Zmaniyot.
849?
We hold by we have halachic times.
We have
He's like,
Let me show you. Oh, I have my phone on me. Does any of you have iSitter downloaded on your phones? Do you have iSitter? How do we determine the latest time to say the Shema? We don't look at this, Ori. There's an algorithm that the rabbis have used for thousands of years that they're able to determine exactly how much a halachic hour is. Remember I mentioned this last week? That in the winter, an hour is less than 60 minutes. In the summer, an hour is more than 60 minutes.
But it's a frame. It's still a frame.
No, but where do we get that from? We get that from the sunrise and sunset.
Right, but it's just it's a reference.
We don't, but we don't, right, but we don't go by that regarding mitzvah observance. We don't. You follow?
As a reference, what we think.
We don't. I don't look at my watch to calculate when I can say the Shema. That has not, the current time has nothing to do, right? Doesn't.
Yeah, but you say you can't say Shema before 6:24.
Right. Where does that come from?
So the
Why
sun-
6:24?
It comes from the sun.
6:24 comes from the amount of time between sunrise and sunset.
But you don't know when 6:24 is exactly if you don't have an actual scientific clock.
Thank you, scientific clock, for helping us determine the time.
So scientifically, you still can prove that the time is.
It's just
Why
a
would we
reference.
No, but one second. But that clock, where does it? Where does it? Where is it based on? What's it based on? What is space-time based on?
When the first time they went to space. They started
It's
calculating
based
time.
on Earth and its relation to the sun.
I mean, space-time is.
There is such a thing as space-time, by the way.
Space-time is just.
Can you
Time
Google
doesn't
what time
really
is it in
exist.
space right now?
It's just
I think it's
Earth.
What time is it in space?
It's like here. It's Houston time.
So how can we know?
Rabbi,
Yeah,
space-time
it's
is an
used to-
abstract idea.
That's what I'm trying to explain to Ori, but he.
Scientifically, it's
Yeah,
an
like
abstract idea.
Space and time is
There's no real
warped.
time.
In
You
space
guys
right now,
have
it's
the
11:30
time
p.m.
to talk about the past and the future and the present.
So
Next
theoretically, Rabbi,
Right.
theoretically, if we decide one day to colonize Mars or the moon,
Interstellar.
how do you measure when to do a shuttle on Mars?
I'm sorry.
That's from.
This was like
That's for another class
last
too.
week.
That's next week's
Because they
class.
say that on Mars you have 25.
Okay, so I can give you a couple answers. According to Moshe Sternbach, don't go to Mars, period. And another more creative answer would be, if there was life on Mars or on the moon or whatever, to determine the sunrises and sunsets.
The Gemara talks about life in outer space.
Really?
The Gemara talks about life in outer space.
There's a reference of life in outer space.
Why have we been learning Chumash these past 3 years?
Adam?
Let's start learning this stuff. That sounds juicy. I don't know. I'm unfamiliar with those Gemaras.
I asked one of the rabbis, and they told me that there's a Gemara that talk about life in outer space. Or
Life? Oh, really?
like-
I mean, there are Kabbalistic ideas of different levels of world, but
Did you know that?
we live in.
7 hours ahead right now.
Oh yeah.
So that's 3:50.
Uh-huh.
What's 7 hours ahead?
Space-time.
What space time?
The
So it's
space
based off
shuttle
the French
is
time
right
system.
now is 3:50.
So it's based off the French time system. Ew.
So they probably follow Houston, Texas.
No, 7 hours
No.
ahead.
7 hours ahead.
Yeah,
Why
it's
is that?
France.
Which
France.
country is 7 hours ahead?
Paris.
Paris.
France.
France. Interesting.
There you go, boy.
Okay, so just to recap everything that we've said. Okay, we've said that one approach was that we have to be consistent, and until the sun actually sets, the halachic day continues, which means, for lack of better terminology, you're screwed. If you go to the North Pole, is there a way to edit that? No. You go to the North Pole. You are in trouble. You are bound by the rules of sunrise and sunset, and not much you can do about that.
There's no rabbis that say just don't go to those places anymore.
Yes, we mentioned that, Rabbi Moshe Sternbach. He says because mitzvah observance would be compromised, don't go there. Second approach, right? Another minority opinion was that time does not apply to areas without daily sunsets. The same way there's an opinion that says what that means is that halachic time is dependent on a sunrise and sunset. We don't go with that opinion. Remember we saw that Rashi that said that we have a 24-hour system that was created before the sun and the moon were created. So don't worry, hold your horses, keep your seatbelts on, right? Yes.
But that doesn't.
There's a grand conclusion to all of this.
I wish.
Okay,
What?
But that doesn't excuse you from, doing
What?
time-bound mitzvahs.
Huh?
Does that excuse you from doing time, like...
Exactly. You're in trouble. You can walk the walk, talk the talk, do the motions, but all it is either rabbinical in nature or just to keep yourself familiar with the mitzvahs. You cannot change the reality. If the Torah's reality requires us to do our mitzvah based on sunrise and sunset, if you're lacking a sunrise and sunset, you can't, it's not, oh, here they come. That was too loud, right? So if we are dependent on a sunrise and a sunset, then and there's no sunrise or sunset, then you're in trouble. There's nothing you can do about that, right?
Wait, what did we say about Shabbat?
What about Shabbat? So according to one opinion regarding Shabbat, you're stuck in that long Shabbat. According to opinion number 1. You're stuck in that long Shabbat.
That's so
According to opinion number 2, who cares about Shabbat? There's no sun, there's no normalcy, there's no normal sunrise and sunset. There's no mitzvah observance when you're in a place of compromise, such as space, such as the Arctic and Antarctic. That's opinion number 2.
Shabbat's going to last a year.
So
A year,
Yeah.
180 days.
No, 20. No, it's not. Daylight is 180 days.
Oh God, he's right. My God.
That's a long Shabbat.
You still need the night part, Friday night.
The man is smart, I tell ya. He's right, because if you start there at night, that's one heck of a long night. And the next day is like Shabbat morning. Jessica, we need much more than a large crock pot. We need...
We need an extra.
Oh my gosh, that's like a year Shabbat. Yeah,
But
that's...
you only need to eat 3 meals in that year.
And it's only one person. You're not feeding.
I guess you're a raw food vegetarian.
Okay?
You'll ration.
So the most popular approach was that the new day begins every time the Earth begins a new rotation on its axis. However, the question was, how do we apply this third approach? So the approach was, we have to follow a rhythm of 24-hour periods. Great, thank you, Rabbi, that helps us. But where do you choose that 24-hour period? How do you choose it? So we had a couple opinions. Opinion number 1 was Rabbi Sternbach, who said that Shabbat begins the 7th time the sun hits its lowest point in the sky. That was Rav Sternbach. That you take a look at the lowest point, that's a 24-hour period. The Ben Ish Chai holds that nightfall begins at 6 p.m. every day. I don't know why that helps us, because how do we determine when 6 p.m. is?
Yeah, did he give like a reference
He just
point?
determines it. Like you arrive and you assume it's 6 p.m. and then you go from there.
I guess that's what it means. I think that's what it means, Jessica. That he arrives 6 p.m. and then you follow that. Rabbi Yosef Lieberman and the Kloisenberger Rebbe, who's the great-grandfather of my friend that I told you about at the beginning of the class, he says to follow Israel time. You follow Israel time. And the Tiferet Yisrael says that you begin Shabbat when you go with your hometown. Okay?
So the conclusion is ask your local.
So the conclusion is you choose one of those 4 approaches to follow the 24-hour time period. Okay. Yes, Chaim.
Just one last comment. I know
Yes.
there's a plan outside in space. They have 2 suns. That means you can see 2 suns.
What?
Our sun. It's based
What?
on our sun.
They have what in
Like
what?
in Star Wars.
Oh, it's a real thing. What?
How?
One sun, but there's multiple moons.
Well, that's
Somebody's been watching too much Star
No,
Wars.
there's plenty of suns. Just only one is solar